What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video. This time we're going to be going over the DK tank. This is the tank that I run. I've run through Vet Hell Raw with this. Definitely a lot of endgame content, all the Vet Hard Mode DLC dungeons. So this is kind of where I stand in terms of tanking. Like all of our other build videos, we're going to go over gear, skills, CPs, and since you obviously can't do a parse with a tank, I will be showing you guys instead a clip from a Vet Hard Mode DLC dungeon to kind of show you how I play the tank. So this is my tank. This is my go-to tanking setup for 90 to 95% of the content that I run. Running Blood Spawn, 1 light, 1 medium, both in divines. Running 5-piece Ebon armory, all on the body. I have Sturdy in my small pieces and Infused on my large pieces. Using health enchantments on my smalls and prismatic enchants on my large pieces. In terms of monster helms, there's a couple things you can do here to kind of mix things up. You can go Infused on the headpiece and use a prismatic enchant to give yourself a little bit more magicka and stamina if you want. Depends on what your attributes are, and that kind of depends on race and other things that we'll talk about in a few minutes. You can go Sturdy on the shoulders instead of divines. I like having that little bit of extra magicka recovery, so I'm going with divines on both pieces. I also do have a magicka enchant on my shoulders, and I'll explain why I have a magicka enchant versus a health enchant in a few minutes as well. In terms of jewelry and weapon and shields, I have Alkosh. Alkosh, you can get that from Maw of Lorcage. That's the trial that you get in the Thieves Guild DLC. You're going to be running Alkosh for that 5-piece bonus. So if you don't have a full 5-piece Alkosh set, so if you don't have 3 pieces of jewelry, 2 one-handers, and 2 shields, I would not recommend running Alkosh because you basically are running it for that 5-piece effect. So I have the 3 jewelry pieces here. All 3 have shield play, which reduces cost of bash and cost of blocking. I have a defending dagger with a crusher enchant, an infused shield with prismatic. On my back bar I have a charged sword and a well-fitted shield, also with prismatic and crusher. Best traits for weapons are obviously going to be defending, and the best trait for shield is going to be reinforced. You can get by with infused and sturdy, those are perfectly fine. Divines as well, but reinforce is going to give you that extra resist bonuses that are going to be very, very useful as a tank. These are where my stats are kind of sitting at. These are my stat distributions. I do have that 1 point magicka just to give me a little bit of extra magicka. You can put that point into health if you want to, but then it's up to you. You can put all 64 points into health, or you can try to even it out dependingly. I have a bunch of different tanking setups I use, so this is kind of what I found to be the most to work the best with about all but 1 or 2 of my tanking setups. So you can see here, max health 37.6k. I am not a race, I'm a Dunmer, so I don't get any health bonuses. This, if you are, let's say, a Imperial or a Nord or any other class that gets health boosts, this is obviously going to be higher. Health stacking is a lot more prevalent in Morrowind versus Homestead, so you're going to see a lot of tanks running at least 35k health is what I've been seeing as the bare minimum. 20.7k stamina. My stamina is higher than it should be because I am running Alkosh. Alkosh has the robust enchantment, which increases my stamina, so there's no real way around that. As a DK tank, due to the nerf to helping hands, you're going to want to stay at or below, I believe the cutoff is about 19.5k stamina, so I'm about 1k over, so that's kind of the number you want to shoot for, 19k, 19.5k stamina. And my magicka is at 18.5k. Generally speaking, you want your magicka to be just slightly lower than your stamina. So in an ideal scenario, you'll have about 19k stamina to 18k magicka. This is because of the change to orbs and shards. They no longer return magicka and stamina exclusively, respectively. They restore your lowest pool, or rather, they restore your highest pool between the two, with shards restoring half of that amount to your lowest pool. So you want your stamina to be higher than your magicka, so you're always going to get stamina back from orbs and shards versus magicka. In terms of recovery, stamina and health recovery, those numbers don't really matter too much. It's the magicka recovery that matters the most, since all your buffs pretty much come from magicka abilities. So you see here I have almost 9k magicka recovery. You want at least 900, 950. If you can hit 1k, that's fantastic, but it's not necessary as long as you're above 900. Using the Atronak Mundustone will help you hit that 900 magicka recovery. See here my resists are a little bit on the low side because I don't have a reinforced shield. 24k spell, 20k, 20.5k physical. This is without my major buffs and without Bloodspawn. With my major buffs and with Bloodspawn I do hit the cap, so don't worry about not hitting the cap. In addition, when you're tanking, it's not necessarily about hitting the resist caps. If you can hit them, great. If you can't hit them, as long as you're above somewhere around like 25, 26, 27k, you should be fine. Like I said, I've tanked Vet Trial with this, and I tank Vet Hard Mode DLC dungeons all the time with this build, and I really don't have any issues dying unless it's due to, you know, careless mistakes. Ability bars here for this build. I have Pierce Armor. You can use Ransack if you're running a 12-man group and you know your healer's always going to have Elemental Drain up. If we look at Ransack, it'll give you Minor Resolve, which increases your physical resist by about 1.3k. Very useful. Pierce Armor is the morph that I have just for 4-man content when you can't guarantee that your healer is going to be running Ellie Drain. Heroic Slash for that ultimate generation. Igneous Shields, this is your primary shield ability. This is why we have so much health, because it scales off your max health. Green Dragon Blood, this is a flex spot. I have Green Dragon Blood right now for a self-heal, but you can replace it with a number of different skills. I'll go over that in just a second here. Absorb Magicka, this helps reduce your block cost and increases the amount you can block. It's also useful for self-heals when you're up against casters. I have Reviving Barrier here for, I only have 5%, but you can get a max of 10% extra Magicka regen if you have Barrier slotted on your front bar. So for your flex spot here, instead of Green Dragon Blood, you have a couple of options here as a DK. You can use Reflective Plate if you're up against anybody who's using projectiles, so archers or spellcasters, for instance. You can use Deep Breath as an interrupt if you need a ranged interrupt ability. You can use Igneous Weapons to give your group some buffs, but that's fairly expensive to use. What else you can use? You can use Ring of Preservation to get some damage mitigation there. It also reduces the cost of dodge rolling, which is useful to have. You can use Orbs, Mystic or Energy. I have them morphed to Mystic right now. Just helps feed your healer resources since they can't pop their own orbs. You can use Blood Altar for the minor lifesteal. You can use Vigor for some group healing. You can use Purge if you're up against enemies that will apply status effects. Or you can use Guard to help reduce the damage your DPS or healer are taking, as well as giving them some extra DPS by giving them minor force. Those are the kind of the flex spots you can have for this 4th slot here. Back bar, you have the Ranged Taunt, Inner Rage. You have Shuffle, which is the medium armor skill. 15% dodge chance is very powerful. Talons for CC control, crowd control. Volatile Armor, this is where you're going to get your major buffs. You can use Hardened Armor. I'm actually going to morph it to Hardened Armor for that extra damage shield. And Unrelenting Grip, again, for your crowd control, pulling enemies towards you. And Aggressive Horn, which is the most powerful ultimate a tank can use for group buffs, just for that major force buff. Nothing here is really interchangeable. The only flex spot you really have is this green Dragon Blood. If you're running a trial, it depends on the fight. Obviously, if you're running a trial, you might not need Unrelenting Grip and Choking Talons, in which case you can swap them out for any of the abilities that I mentioned earlier. One other ultimate you can use on this front bar instead of Reviving Barrier, again this is kind of fight dependent, is Magma Shell. This is just super helpful, basically gives you 11 seconds of essentially invincibility that lets you basically heavy attack, do whatever you need to do to get resources back. Looking at our CP distribution, under the Lover I have 64 points in Arcanist, 37 in Tenacity. You can go 75, but then you're taking CP points out of Arcanist and putting them somewhere else, so or taking 11 CP points out of something else and putting them into Arcanist for 1% extra regen. That's kind of your call to make. I don't think it's worth it. 31 points into Warlord to get rid of Break Free, 2 points into Bashing, just kind of, I have 2 points left over, so I just put them into Bashing Focus. 20 points into Tumbling, reducing cost of roll dodge. This is just to conserve stamina. 56 points into Shadow Ward to reduce cost of blocking. Super useful. For my mage CP points, 64 points into Bless to help my self heals. 31 points into Elfborn because my self heals are almost all Magicka abilities. There are some stamina abilities there, but that's only a Vigor, and Absorb Magicka is a flat percentage in heal. 31 points into Physical Weapons Expert, 20 points into Master at Arms. This is just so I can do some DPS while I'm soloing. 51 points into Thaumaturge, 13 points into Precise Strikes. Your mage CPs, it doesn't really matter too much where you put them. The only one that really matters is 64 into Blessed and Elfborn, because Green Dragon Blood does scale off Elfborn. So that's kind of important, but the rest of these, this is just so I can kill stuff, solo content, without taking forever. Warrior CP points, 49 to Hardy, 49 to Elemental Defender. Make sure to put points into these two passives first. There's currently a bug or unintended feature where if you don't put them into these two passives first, you won't get the full damage mitigation. So make sure you put your points into here first. 31 points into Thick Skin to reduce damage over time. 48 into Ironclad to reduce damage against direct damage. Direct damage is basically anything that deals all of its damage in one attack. So that this basically covers about 90% of damage that you take from boss fights. So Ironclad's a very powerful passive to get. And then 33 points into Bastion to increase the size of our damage shields. So that's your Igneous shields. Some other information you want to keep in mind when you're tanking: you're going to want to be using Tri-Stat potions, which are crafted potions. Right here you can see it restores health, Magicka, stamina, and gives you the major regen buffs for each of those respectively. You can make these using Columbine is the one that you absolutely need to have, Mountain Flower, Buglos, or you can use something like, I think Dragonthorn works. Basically you just want you want to use Columbine and anything that has Restore Health, Restore Magicka, and Restore Stamina, any two ingredients with that combination. So this is kind of where you're going to get the most amount of your sustain from, particularly if you're an Argonian, because you get extra resources back from using your tripods. If you're an Argonian, you can even use just trash pots and still get essentially the same effect as if you drank a tripod. So that's it for this particular tank build. We're now going to go into a demonstration of how I tank, going through Vet Hard Mode, Cradle of Shadows. Alright, ready?
Yep.
Alright guys, this is the Alkosh and Ebon tank. Going to be doing a tank demonstration video on vet hard mode, Cradle of Shadows, so you guys can kind of see how I play as a tank. So as you can see here, pretty much light weaving, blocking when necessary. A lot of this content that's not vet trials, you don't need to perma-block. You can definitely weave in light attacks and heavy attacks here and there. This rotation is a little bit different because for Cradle, you're going to need to run Purge to get rid of the orb debuffs when they hit you. Just running Purge as a tank is helpful on the healer. Helps them conserve their magicka. See here, I'm not really running out of stamina. I'm using a lot more magicka than I am stamina. Which makes sense. Most of your buffs do come from magicka skills, so.
Hey, Dar.
Hey, Dark.
See here, this is not a very good location. The potions I'm using are tripods. I crafted them myself. They restore magicka, health, and stamina. If you're a tank and you're running endgame content, you're going to want to run your tri-stat potions.
Closed.
It's pretty important. It just really helps out your sustain versus trash pots. You can make them using Columbine, Mountain Flower, and anything that basically has restored magicka.
We're here whenever you get there.
Is here by the time we've gotten back, pretty much almost at full resources. I see them.
We're here.
Now we're just waiting on the mechanic. See range taunt and then go in for the poke. You want to make sure to keep the enemy taunted. So you want to have that that range taunt there as your first taunt, so you can ensure that they will aggro on you when the combat starts.
Yo, Godric, you got anything to give me some, there we go.
You'll see here that this is my sustain without using any ultimates. This is kind of the level of sustain you want to have as a tank. If you can, basically the idea is if you can sustain through vet hard mode costs with little to no issues, then you're pretty good in sustain in terms of tanking. Especially as a, just due to the mechanics and costs, since the tank is normally the one that saves their ultimate. So you can see I'm not really having any sustain issues at all. That's definitely helped out by the fact that my healer and 2 DPS are fantastic. Definitely that's helped out. That's helping out a lot on my sustain, since I don't have to block as much, don't have to use my buffs as often.
Are you just doing Cradle? Yeah.
Yep. They're there. Kill the things over there.
Fucking last one.
Use the potion there just to maintain my resources.
Sorry, I'm just trying to build some magic off of them.
The things that you see popping up on my screen, that's from Action Duration Reminder.
Alright.
It's a very useful add-on to have to keep track of your buffs and when you need to reapply them. Again, you see here, range taunt, then go up for the actual swordboard taunt. Don't move. Shit. I'm gonna go to my left, zombie.
Somebody up behind me.
This is where I screw up.
Or I'm just gonna die from orb.
The direction actually doesn't matter if you die here.
What?
The direction you dodge.
Oh, I screwed up there, didn't hit purge at the wrong, worst possible time.
Maybe blue orbs.
And so now this is where sustain issue comes in because of the blue orbs. There's nothing we can really do about that, just because that drains magicka. So at this point it's basically, I'm still not using my ultimate even though I can restore resources using my ultimate, just because we need those red orbs back, especially since one of our DPS is down.
That's not gonna happen.
So you
No,
see
no.
here, now I'm going to end up using my ultimate just to get some resources back here.
I still have 3 ads on me.
Yeah, I had no magic in the torn. I got 2 of them. You can see there, DPS said they had ads, so I pulled them off them. It's somewhat important in this fight to be able to do that. And there you go. That's kind of how I tank. Like I said, if you can tank vet hard mode cost with little to no sustain issues, you're pretty good in terms of sustain as a tank.
Get a heavy divines.
So that's it for this build guide. I will see you guys in the next dungeon.
Heavy infused.